If you're looking for some simple tips and tricks on how to create a vintage travel poster using Illustrator and Photoshop, then you're in the right place. Hi there everyone, my name is Andrei Marius, and in this Envato Task Plus tutorial, I'll put my experience to use as I show you step by step how you can put together this vector illustration using Adobe Illustrator, and then how to apply some subtle textures using Adobe Photoshop. To complete this design, we'll use a photo, some fonts, a texture, and some Photoshop brushes. All of these assets come from Envato Elements, so make sure to check out Envato Elements, where you can get unlimited downloads of stock videos, music, graphics, photos, fonts, and many more. That's millions of creative assets, all ready to use and with simple commercial licensing. You can subscribe right now using the link in the description. If you haven't done it already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to check the bell icon to make sure that you'll be notified whenever new tutorials are published. And that being said, we can move to Illustrator. Let's create a new document. Go to the Print Templates and select this A3 template. For this tutorial, we'll use the RGB color mode, but keep in mind that if you end up wanting to print this design, you'll need to convert to CMYK first. Keep the resolution at 300 pixels per inch, and then you can create your new document. Now go to Window in the menu bar, and first of all make sure that the control panel is active, and then open all the panels that have this check mark. Let's also go to View and enable the Smart Guides, and now you can start by selecting the rectangle tool from your toolbar. Simply click on your artboard and just set the height to 7.5 inches. Don't bother to adjust the width. Using the selection tool, let's move this shape to the top left corner of the artboard, and as you can see, the Smart Guides will do the work. Stretch this shape to make sure that it goes all the way to the right edge of the artboard. Then select the stroke and remove the color. Select the fill and replace the color with a linear gradient. Set the angle to 90 degrees and then focus on these gradient sliders as we need to adjust these colors. You can start with this one, so just double click it. Make sure that the color mode is set to RGB and then replace this black with 78, 120 and 155. Keep this one white and then click on the gradient bar to add one more gradient slider. Move it to around 45%, double click it and replace this color with 159, 189 and 219. And then reselect the rectangle tool as we need to add a second shape which will cover the bottom side of your artboard. You can hold down the Ctrl key and click outside this shape to deselect it. Then move your cursor to this corner and click and drag to add a second shape. Move all the way to the bottom right corner of the artboard, and again the Smart Guides will help. Now let's adjust the gradient that's applied for this new shape. Return to the gradient panel and first of all click this button which will move your white gradient slider to the right edge. Then click and drag this slider to remove it. Move this one to about 40%. Double click it and replace the color with 99, 159 and 169. And then also drag this diamond gradient slider to about 75%. Now you can continue with the pen tool. We'll use it to add some green hill shapes. You can start the first one from this point, go up, and then continue with simple clicks to create the rest of your hill shape. Remember to close this path. Replace the linear gradient with a flat color and let's make it green. So go 42, 123 and 0. Continue with the pen tool and let's add a second hill shape on top of this one. Fill it with a linear gradient. Drag this slider all the way to the left. Double click it and replace this color with 82, 144 and 8. And for this other gradient slider, you can select it and use this color picker to simply grab this color. Now that you're done with the background, you can move to the layers panel and double click this layer to name it background. Lock it to make sure that you will not be able to select or move any of these shapes by accident, and then add a new layer and name it cliffs. This is where you'll need this photo from Envato Elements, so let's download it and add it to your design. Make sure that the pen tool is still active and use it to add 4 cliff shapes using the cliffs from this photo. Keep in mind that you do not need to follow the exact outlines of these cliffs, just use them as a rough reference. In the end, you should end up with something that's somewhat similar with this. Feel free to remove this photo, fill your cliff shapes using these colors, then reselect the pen tool, and let's add some grassy patches to these cliffs. We'll start with the front one. Whenever you find these mark guides more annoying than useful, you can easily disable them by pressing Ctrl and U. Now you can continue with this shape. Using the eyedropper tool, you can easily fill this shape with this green. Continue and add a second grass patch. Let's also add one to the top. Remember that you can always use the direct selection tool to adjust the position of these points. Reselect the pen tool and let's add some grassy patches to the second cliff. Again, add one to the top. Now you need to quickly move to the layers panel and drag this grassy patch right below your front cliff. And finally, let's add a grassy patch to this third cliff, like this. Continue with the pen tool and let's add some water foaming up at the bottom of these cliffs. You can start from this point. Click and drag to add some curve to this path. Continue your shape. Go along the edges of these cliffs. And in the end, your shape should look somewhat like this. Right click it and send it to back. Fill it with a linear gradient. You need to set the angle to -55 degrees. Move this gradient slider to about 55%. Select this other gradient slider and first of all, let's move it to 90%. Also lower the opacity to 0%. And don't forget to replace this black with white. Now that we're done with these cliffs, you can lock the layer, add a new one, and let's name it Tourist. Keep it selected and make sure that the pen tool is still active. And now you can put together your tourist figure. We'll start with the torso, which should be a simple trapezoid. Replace this linear gradient with a flat color and make it red. So go 197, 36, and 49. Continue with the skirt. When you're done, fill this shape with 48, 69, and 97. Let's quickly select both of these shapes and press Ctrl+ to zoom in on them. Reselect the pen tool and let's continue with the arms. You can start from this point, click and drag to add this nice curve. Now we don't want to keep the curve for the next section of this path, so simply click this point, go down and add a new point. Continue with the rest of the arm somewhat like this. Once you're happy with the look of your shape, switch to the selection tool, hold down the Alt key and drag a copy to the right. Rotate this copy somewhat like this and place it in this position. Let's also add the hands, so I'll use the pen tool again. We'll use a simple shape for this hand. Make it white. And don't forget to send it to back. For the second hand, first we need to make a small adjustment for the arm. Now use the pen tool. And let's add the second hand. Again, make it white. You'll need another 2 white shapes for the legs. Select both of these shapes and send them to back. Continue with the pen tool and let's also add the shoes. Fill this shape with 96, 56, and 19. Hold down the Alt key and again drag a copy of this shape in this position. Let's make some small adjustments to the leg shapes and also to the skirt. You can use the anchor point tool to adjust the curvedness of this point. Now select the torso and press Ctrl+ to zoom in on it. Reselect the pen tool. Before we move to the head, let's add a green scarf. So replace this color with 31, 122, and 35. Make sure that the pen tool is still active, and let's also add these 2 shapes. Now switch to the ellipse tool as we need to add the head shape. Simply click on your artboard to create a 0.8 inch circle. Let's fill it with 98, 55, and 26. Then move this circle on top of the scarf roughly in this position. Reselect the pen tool and let's add the hair. Start from this point. Continue with the pen tool and let's add a hat shape. Fill it with 49, 68, and 100. Let's also add a red band for this hat, so reselect the pen tool and let's draw a simple path, somewhat like this. Use the eyedropper tool to fill it with this red. Select your hat shape along with this new red shape. Switch to the shape builder tool. Remember to hold down the Alt key and just click these 2 sections to easily remove them from your design. Now you can use the direct selection tool to make some final adjustments. Press Ctrl and 0 to have a look at your entire design. And if you're happy with the look of your tourist, you can lock this layer, add a new one and name it text. And select the type tool from your toolbar. For the beginning, focus on the control panel to set the settings for the text which we're about to add. We'll use the Carter's font, which you can get from Envato Elements. Increase the size to 170. And now you can click on your artboard and type in Ireland. Press the escape key when you're done. Let's move this text roughly in this position. You can remove the current text color and then move to the appearance panel to add a new fill for your text. Make it white. Make sure that the entire text is selected, so click this type section and let's go to Effect, Warp and Rise. Keep this horizontal box checked and set the bend to 55%. Click OK to apply this effect and return to the appearance panel to add a second fill for your text. Select this bottom fill and replace the color with 42, 123, and 0. For the moment, nothing will change, but now as we apply a transform effect, you will notice the changes. Let's increase the number of copies to 12. For the move settings, let's enter -0.015. Copy these settings, paste them in this section, and remove the minus. Click OK, and as you can see now you have this nice 3D effect. Before we continue with the rest of the text, let's use the ellipse tool to cover this hole from the R. Make it white. Go to Envato Elements and download this set of icons. You'll only need this clover icon, so select it and press Ctrl C to copy it. Now you can close this document. Press Ctrl V to paste this clover inside your poster design. You can use the eyedropper tool to make it green. Drag it on top of your text. Scale this clover and place it roughly like this. Now you can reselect the type tool. For this new piece of text, you will need the Whipping Piccadilly font. So select it. Keep the size set to 170 and again click on your artboard to type in visit. Change the color to white. Then go to Object, Transform and Shear. Just set the angle to 20 degrees. Keep the rest of the settings as they come. Click OK. Let's rotate this text a bit and place it in this position. Actually, let's select all your text and move it a bit higher. Now reselect the type tool. You'll need again that Carter's font. Lower the size to 40 and then click on your artboard to type in the. Change the color of this new text to 78, 120 and 156. Then move your text roughly in this position. Reselect the type tool. Don't forget to deselect this text. Then increase the font size to 60 and lower the leading to 50. Click again on your artboard and let's type in Cliffs of Moher. Using the eyedropper tool, you can easily pick the color from this text, but keep in mind that you need to hold down the Shift key as you click the text, otherwise you will copy the text settings along with the color. Now you need to rotate this text and move it in this position. Go again to Object, Transform and Shear. Use a 20 degrees angle and click OK. Let's select all the text and move it a bit lower. You can now unlock all your layers. Let's make a quick correction to this background rectangle. Select this diamond slider and move it to 25%. And then select this other diamond slider and set the location to 60%. With this final touch, our work in Illustrator is complete. All that's left for you to do is select the entire design, press Ctrl C to copy it, and move to Photoshop. Let's create a new document. Go to the Print Templates and again select this A3 template. Press Ctrl N0 to zoom in on your canvas and then Ctrl V to paste your vector illustration. We'll paste it as a smart object, which will allow you to later edit the vector illustration if that's what you need. So click OK, press Enter. Now you'll need this paper texture from Envato Elements, so download it. Simply add it to your design. Let's rotate it. Scale it to make sure that it will cover your entire canvas, and keep in mind that you can hold down the Alt key, which will scale your texture from the center. When you're done, you can press Enter, move to the Layers panel, and let's change the blending mode of this texture to Hard Light, and also lower the opacity to about 30%. Now keep your paper texture selected, and let's go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and select Vibrance. Make sure that you're checking this box to make sure that this new layer will only affect the paper texture and click OK. Increase the vibrance to 100 and the saturation to only 30. And as you can see, this improves the vintage look of your poster. For the next move, you need to start by adding a new layer using this button. Double click the name and let's type in green texture. Select the quick selection tool from your toolbar, and first of all make sure that the sample all layers box is checked. Then click this green hill to load a selection around it, and keep in mind that you can hold down the Alt key and click the sections that you wish to remove from your selection. Once you're happy with this selection around your green hills, you can continue with the brush tool. You'll need this set of brushes from Envato Elements, so let's download it. To quickly import those brushes, you can right-click on your canvas, click this wheel icon and go to Import Brushes. Just double-click your brushes and you'll get them in this list. Let's expand this list and scroll down as we need to select this Grain 6 brush. Let's quickly switch to the eyedropper tool as we need to grab this green color for the foreground color. Return to the brush tool and use it to paint the top edges of your selection, somewhat like this. Once you're done, you can press Ctrl D to get rid of the selection. Reselect the quick selection tool. First of all, don't forget to add a new layer. We'll name it Cliff 1, white texture. Then click this front hill to load a selection around it. Remember that you can hold down the Alt key and remove these green sections from your selection. Using the square bracket keys, you can decrease the brush size. Once you're happy with your selection, return to the brush tool. Make sure that the foreground color is white. Right-click on your canvas and let's increase the brush size to about 1000. Now simply draw across the right edges of your selection and then move to the layers panel to change the blending mode of this layer to soft light and also lower the opacity to 40%. Let's add a new layer and this time name it Cliff 1, black texture. Press the D hotkey, which will quickly swap the current colors with the default ones. The most important thing is that the foreground color is set to black. And now you need to draw across the right edges of your cliff, somewhat like this. You can press Ctrl and Z if you are not happy with the look of your texture. And when you're okay with it, you can return to the layers panel, where you need to change the blending mode to soft light, and again lower the opacity to 30%. Remember that you need to press Ctrl and D to get rid of this selection. Continue with the quick selection tool and load a selection around this second cliff. Then remove the green sections. Now you need to add a new layer and name it Cliff 2 texture. Return to the brush tool. Make sure that the size is set to 600 pixels. Set the color to white and draw the highlights in this section somewhat like this. Then make it black and add the shadows. Once you're happy with the look of these textures, you can get back to the layers panel and change the blending mode to soft light, and this time lower the opacity to 40%. Now again, Ctrl D to remove the selection. Use the quick selection tool to load a selection around this next cliff. Remove the green section, add a new layer and name it Cliff 3 texture. Continue with the brush tool. This time you need to set the size to 500 pixels. First use the white foreground color and add the highlights like this. Continue with the black and add the shadows. And when you're happy, return to the layers panel to change the blending mode of this layer to soft light and lower the opacity to 50%. Moving to the final cliff, let's load a selection around it. Add a new layer and name it Cliff 4 texture. Make sure that the foreground color is set to white. Grab again the brush tool and just add a highlight on this section. When you're happy, return to the layers panel and just change the blending mode to soft light and also lower the opacity to 80%. We'll continue with this tourist figure, so use the quick selection tool to load a selection just around the torso. Let's add a new layer, name it Tourist 1 texture. Reselect the brush tool, make sure that the size is set to 500 and the foreground color to black. Then just draw a texture like this. Change the blending mode of this layer to overlay and continue by loading a selection around the skirt. Let's add another layer, name it Tourist to Texture. Again, use the brush tool and draw a texture along the right side of the selection. And for this layer, you need to change the blending mode to soft light and also lower the opacity to 50%. Finally, you need to load a selection around the sea. Something like this. Switch back to the brush tool. This time you'll need the brush named Scatter number 4. So select it, increase the size to 1000. Make sure that the foreground color is set to white. Add a new layer. Name it Sea Texture. And now you can draw across the top edges of your selection, somewhat like this. Actually, let's make it a bit more subtle. When you're happy, remember to get rid of your selection, return to the Layers panel, change the blending mode of this final layer to soft light, and also lower the opacity to 70%. With this final touch, your vintage poster is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Remember to hit that like button, as it helps me know that I did a good job. Subscribe if you aren't already, and don't forget to click the little bell icon to be notified of any new tutorials. I'm Andrei Marius, and I'll see you in the next video.